Hello, I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm presenting some brief lectures and commentaries on topics from the courses I teach in literature and cultural studies. This particular episode is on Book 4 of Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. I ended my previous webcast lecture as Gulliver was describing the legal system and lawyers in England. We will pick up the narrative here with Gulliver describing for his Wenham masters the concepts of luxury and the lifestyle of the aristocracy. This Master Wenham, maybe with some self-conscious irony, maybe pulling Gulliver's leg a little bit, he says he was sure that Gulliver must have been born of some noble family because he far exceeded in shape, color, cleanliness, all the yahoos of his nation, of Wenham land. Although I seem to fail in strength and agility, which must be imputed to my different way of living from those other brutes, the local yahoos. And besides, I was not only endowed with the faculty of speech, but likewise with some rudiments of reason, to a degree that with all his acquaintance I passed for a prodigy. Gulliver wants to make his Master Wenham aware that he appreciates this compliment, but in fact, he's kind of ordinary. He's not really an aristocrat. His birth was of the common sort. His folks were honest but not rich, and they were just able to give him some education, but nothing like what the aristocrats give. The nobility of Europe are altogether different. Young noblemen are brought up in idleness and luxury with no responsibilities. Everything they want, everything they need, they're spoiled rotten. As soon as they're old enough, they go out and find prostitutes and catch syphilis. This is what an aristocrat is. They consume themselves, they contract odious diseases among lewd females. A weak, diseased body, a meager countenance, and sallow complexion are no uncommon marks of a great man. And a healthy, robust appearance is so far disgraceful in a man of quality that the world is apt to conclude his real father to have been a groom or a coachman, especially when it is seen that the imperfections of his mind run parallel with those of his body. That is, if he's clever as well as strong and robust and healthy. You know for sure that this person is not a true aristocrat, but is a bastard child of somebody, and his mother was playing around. That's the dead giveaway, you know. Especially when it is seen that the imperfections run parallel with the body, of the mind and the body, and are little else than a composition of spleen, dullness, ignorance, caprice, sensuality, and pride. Those are the marks that you expect from a true aristocrat, owing to their care to, as I say, preserve the purity of the aristocratic line. When their fortunes are almost ruined, they go spend all their family's money on gambling and drinking and whoring. They have a little bit of money left. They're almost ruined. They marry some woman of mean birth, some disagreeable person, but rich, someone of unsound constitution, merely for the sake of the money, whom they hate and despise, but they go ahead and cheat on her anyway, so it doesn't matter very much. Now, what does the woman get from this? Well, her family, probably, who are wealthy merchants, will, by this way, get to enter the aristocracy, and this rich merchant's grandson, after the rich merchant has worked hard all of his life, kept his shoulder to the wheel, his nose to the grindstone, now will have a grandson who will be raised in idleness and luxury, and as soon as the kid's a teenager, he'll go out and get syphilis. Or something like that, and start all over again with the gambling and the drinking and the disreputable behavior. Well, the productions of such marriages are generally scrofulous, rickety, or deformed children, by which means the family seldom continues above 3 generations, unless the wife takes care to provide a healthy father among her neighbors or domestics in order to improve and continue the breed. Now here's a good responsibility for the good aristocratic housewife. How do you best serve the aristocratic family?
Go out and make better children.
With whom?
More healthy males.
Yeah, with with the stable hand, or the chauffeur, the footman, or the gardener. Well, the reader by this point may be wondering why Gulliver is saying such bad things about the Europeans. He freely confesses to the reader, he's addressing us now directly, that the many virtues of those excellent quadrupeds place an opposite view to human corruptions, and so far opened his eyes and enlightened his understanding that he began to view the actions and passions of man in a very different light, and to think the honor of my own kind was not worth managing. Which, besides, it was impossible for me to do before a person of so acute a judgment as my master, who daily convinced me of 1,000 faults in myself, whereof I had not the least perception before, and which among us would never be numbered, even among human infirmities. I had likewise learned from his example an utter detestation of all falsehood or disguise, and truth appeared so amiable to me that I determined upon sacrificing everything to it. Nothing but the truth. Now that's Plato again. So after all this, Gulliver's Masters delivers his opinion about humans. He looked upon humans as a sort of animals to whose share, by what accident he could not conjecture, some small pittance of reason had fallen, whereof we made no other use than by its assistance to aggravate our natural corruptions, and to acquire new ones which nature had not given us, that we disarmed ourselves of the few abilities nature had bestowed, that we have been very successful in multiplying our original wants, and seem to spend our whole lives in vain endeavors to supply them by our own inventions. All that humans do is make life worse for themselves. Finally, Yahoos seem an awful lot like Englishmen in that they seem to be brown-nosers and sycophants. He had heard, indeed, some curious Wyndhams observe that in most herds of Yahoos, there's one ruling Yahoo who was always more deformed in body and more mischievous than all the rest. That this leader had usually a favorite as like himself as he could get, whose employment was to lick his master's feet, posteriors, and drive the female Yahoos to his kennel, for which he was now and then rewarded with a piece of ass's flesh. This favorite is hated by the whole herd, and therefore, to protect himself, keeps always near the person of his leader. There's an ancient question among philosophers. That is, how much does a human need to be happy? How much material comfort? How much security? What kind of resources? How much food? How much shelter? What do we need to be truly happy? Have any of you ever read Thoreau's Walden? Anyone read Walden in high school? Oh, I so enthusiastically recommend it. Henry David Thoreau, in the 1840s, late 1840s, early 1850s, just went out by a pond in Massachusetts and built a little shack and lived for a year in his little shack. And tried to live on as little as possible, just see if he could be happy without all of the trappings of society. This is an old philosophical question. If you haven't read Thoreau, you probably will not have heard of the ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes. Have you heard of Diogenes? Oh, yeah. You remember where Diogenes lived?
In a barrel.
Diogenes lived in a barrel. This is to demonstrate how you don't have to have a fine house to be happy. Diogenes. Alexander the Great came to visit Diogenes because he was a famous thinker, a famous philosopher, had a great reputation. And Alexander the Great stood before Diogenes and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Alexander is the great conqueror. He has built the empire. Everything in the empire is at his command. Is there anything I can do for you, Mr. Diogenes? Diogenes says what? Do you remember?
Yeah, he says, move out of the way, you're in my sun.
You're blocking the sunshine from me. Your shadow is blocking the sun. Would you move a little bit to the right? That's an absolutely powerful philosophical statement. Right? Thoreau is doing the same thing. And Gulliver hits upon it too. What does he really need to be happy? Well, when my clothes were worn to rags, he said, I made myself others with the skins of rabbits and of a certain beautiful animal about the same size called a something like that, the skin of which is covered with a fine down. Of these I likewise made very tolerable stockings. I soled my shoes with wood, which I cut from a tree, and fitted to the upper leather, and when this was worn out, I supplied it with the skins of yahoos dried in the sun. No man could more verify the truth of these two maxims, that nature is very easily satisfied, and that necessity is the mother of invention. So there you have it. There's Gulliver's experiment with this great philosophical question. How much does a man need to be satisfied on a desert island or in an alien environment? You get some skins from the nuno and some rabbit fur, make some stockings, and take some bark from the tree to make soles for your shoes. And you dry some skins from some yahoos in the sun to make the uppers for your shoes. And then you get some honey from some trees and some water to eat with your bread, and so on. Just passes right over the skins of the yahoos in this long list of things that he's preparing in order to make himself comfortable. Gulliver had gotten into the habit of taking off his clothes and going swimming, a way of keeping clean and refreshing when the weather is hot. But one day, a young female yahoo sees him swimming, saw the whole proceeding, inflamed by desire, as the nag and I conjectured, came running with all speed and leapt into the water within 5 yards of the place where I bathed. I was never in my life so terribly frightened. The nag was grazing at some distance, not suspecting any harm. This yahoo female embraced Gulliver after a most fulsome manner. Gulliver roared in alarm as loud as he could, and the nag came galloping toward him, whereupon the female yahoo quitted her grasp with the utmost reluctancy and leapt upon the opposite bank, where she stood gazing and howling all the time I was putting on my clothes. So Gulliver was saved from being raped by a female yahoo just in the nick of time as the horse comes running. This was a matter of great diversion to my master and his family, as well as of mortification to myself. That's a very telling remark there. This was a matter of diversion to my master and his family, as well as of mortification to myself. What does this tell us about the Wenhams? That they think it's funny that Gulliver almost got raped by an aggressive female yahoo. Yeah.
It makes me think they don't care about him.
Yeah, I think so. You might say, well, they're happy to be amused at his horrible experience. Yeah. Does all their high reason, is there anything in all their pretended noble reason, their elevated status as Platonic philosophers, justify that? I think not. Well, there are clues once in a while that these Wenhams whom Gulliver is describing are maybe not as noble and not as pure and rational and good as he is describing them. He is being too gullible in his acceptance of their attitude about themselves and their condescension toward him, their attitude of superiority toward yahoos, including Gulliver, and the English yahoos about whom he is speaking. That's probably a good enough place to leave Gulliver. Any questions With that, I'll conclude this webcast. But, as always, if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to send me an email.